I am very honored to address you this morning at the opening of the Inception Workshop for the West African Regional Initiative on Post-Ebola Recovery, supported by the government of Japan. And I'd like to thank Professor Addo for remembering those who fell victims to the Ebola virus disease through the region. Let me, by the same token, pay tribute to the peoples of the affected countries and to those who worked so tirelessly and happily, successfully to combat the outbreak. The unprecedented Ebola virus disease outbreak in Africa, as we all know, placed a heavy burden on the region, in particular the three most affected countries of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Since March 2014, over 28,000 people have been infected with the virus, and more than 11,300 lives were lost in the three affected countries. Families, communities, and indeed nations have been devastated. The epidemic has generally disrupted livelihoods, led to loss of household income, placed considerable strain on health systems, reduced government revenues, and limited investment in infrastructure and social services, and generally had an extremely adverse effect on economic growth and social cohesion. In short, on many aspects of human life and well-being. As highlighted by the UN regional directors in their 2015 report, an estimated annual loss of economic growth in the medium term, that's 2014 to 17, ranged from 5% to 19% in the three affected countries. The end of the Ebola virus transmission, as declared by WHO in the three affected countries, brought some relief to all those affected. But we also know that there have been incidents of relapses which national governments, the global community, and other partners have had to address rapidly and robustly. Although I'm relieved to hear of the recent discharge of the final Ebola patients in Liberia and Guinea, we must remain vigilant to prevent further transmissions, underscoring the importance of adapting a broad-based framework for intervention to keep Ebola in check. Our role as the United Nations system is to assist countries and their populations through institutions, through governments and their institutions, to build the capabilities to be more resilient against diseases that hamper economic opportunities and development gains. In this regard, UNDP, together with WHO and other United Nations agencies, is currently supporting the governments of the affected countries in strengthening their emergency responses in order to address efficiently and effectively the impacts of the recent Ebola outbreak. Following, and I may say even before, the International Ebola Recovery Conference hosted by the UN Secretary General in New York in July 2015, UN agencies in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone have been working to support the Ebola recovery efforts. Moving forward, it's critical to address the adverse conditions that enabled a localized epidemic to escalate into a national and regional crisis with even serious global ramifications, and to minimize the risk of its resurgence. Strong and effective systems and processes in the affected countries and in the MRU region as a whole, supported by regional and global disease surveillance networks, are central to this endeavor. Experience elsewhere suggests that even after countries stop the epidemic, the virus may remain latent in the region. And indeed, experts have told us that that is the case in this region. Therefore, post-disaster recovery programs must integrate systems and processes required to ensuring that disease surveillance is improved, that systems are built back better, and that other relevant capacities are in place with appropriate levels of funding to sustain them over the medium and long terms. Effective communication and information management and decentralized health and social delivery systems will be critical. including environmentally sound and sustainable development processes, rapid and reflexive disaster response mechanisms, and targeted social protection, among many other measures. Earlier this week, I had the privilege to meet His Excellency the President of Sierra Leone, who reflected that my arrival to Sierra Leone coincided with the start of the national 10 to 24-month recovery program. The start of this regional initiative indeed also fits into this window of opportunity. At the end of this two-day inception meeting, we should have built sufficient consensus among ourselves to deliver the post-Ebola regional project and raised interest among other partners to sustain the momentum built. I'm sure we're all keen to apply the lessons from the response and the recovery phase, thus the need to strengthen or establish, as need may be, national aid coordination mechanisms as a prerequisite for a successful Ebola recovery. The ultimate goal of all post-Ebola recovery efforts is to re-establish the conditions for a quick return to a path of economic growth, improved state-society relations, and above all, overall human development that can foster more inclusive societies now and in the future. I believe that at the center of this response, there must be efforts to restore confidence and social contracts between communities and between the state and citizens, underpinned by values of participation, inclusion, cohesion, and tolerance. In conclusion, let me reconfirm the support and engagement of the United Nations system in the post-Ebola recovery efforts, and reiterate that this engagement will be guided by regional and national priorities and focus on ensuring that growth and development are inclusive and sustainable, incorporating productive capacities that create employment and livelihoods for the poor and the excluded, that citizens' expectations for voice, development, the rule of law, and accountability are met by stronger systems of democratic governance, that countries can reduce the likelihood of conflict and lower the risk of disasters, including those due to climate change. I'm hopeful that this regional program will be the catalyst to broader and more sustained efforts toward growth and inclusive development in the region. In thanking all of those who have supported the organization of this workshop and who are generously supporting the regional project, not least the government of Japan, I wish you all a productive and fruitful workshop.